Is Florida State's claim legit? Welcome back for another edition of our TV rating series right here at the Voice of College Football. Please like the video and subscribe. And we are doing our best to break these TV viewership numbers down in context. So we are just looking at and ranking conference games. And especially in the smaller conferences, the comparisons are more legit because the conference schedules are more comparable and more exact and similar. But certainly in every conference, it's just about the same. Now, another factor in this is, of course, what networks aired the games, and we're breaking that down as well. Let's get to the ACC, and Florida State at number 1 in conference games. So all 8 Florida State conference games played on networks, meaning the ACC network not considered a network here because we do not have Nielsen ratings. So for a number of these teams, they did not get all 8 of their games rated. For Florida State, it's 27 plus million for those 8 conference games at 3.42 million per game. Clemson's at number 2 at 2.87, just inching out Miami at 2.86. 6 of Clemson's games played on the networks of ABC, ESPN, and the CW, of course. We get our first look at the CW. And for Miami, it was only 4 of 8 conference games, as the other 4 were played on the ACC network. Duke's 5 ACC conference games that were played on networks were definitely bolstered by an appearance against Clemson on Labor Day weekend in an exclusive game with no competition, and then also against Florida State later in the season on a Saturday night ABC game. So Duke pulling in numbers based on 40% of their games against Clemson and Florida State in prime time. We also have Boston College, and again, this number has to be skewed. Boston College at 1.85 million per game, but they also played 2 of those games on ABC, one against Florida State at 3.5 million for that particular game. On down the line, everybody else in the ACC averaging between 1 million and about 1.6 million per game. North Carolina at 1.65 right there. And then the only teams that average less than a million per game, that would be Georgia Tech at 968, with only 4 of their games on network television, the other 4 on the ACC network, and 2 on the CW. So give a break to Georgia Tech there because those CW games never eclipsed a million viewers. And then we also have Virginia. And again, you have to give Virginia a bit of a break on this number here. It's 777,000 average on 6 ACC games played on the networks because 4 of the 6 were played on the CW. And even the likes of Clemson and North Carolina State did not rate well on the CW. Virginia Tech, we're taking out of the rankings here. That 2.12 million average would have placed at number 4 in the conference, but it's only based on 2 games. So Virginia Tech, coming off a bad season the year before with only 3 wins and really turning it around to a certain extent with a 6-6 regular season record, only got 2 looks, 1 on ABC, 1 on ESPN. The other 6 Virginia Tech games all played on the ACC network. And here's the network breakdown. And even though Florida State's at number 1, comfortably by about 500,000 to 600,000 per game, again, they benefit from playing in primetime slots. They also benefit from playing all their games on either ESPN or, 7 of the 8 on ABC. So again, it is a chicken before the egg type scenario because Florida State is wanted by the networks, but also being placed on the networks is going to help out that number of average viewers. And then as we go down the list, you're going to see the shifting of the ABC games down to ESPN and then to the CW, again with Virginia with 4 games on the CW and NC State with 2 right there, as well as Georgia Tech with 2 on the CW. This series, we're comparing teams within a conference. Our previous series about a month ago, check it out, we compared the conferences against each other, and you will see there that the ACC's top-rated game in conference was Clemson and Florida State at 6.7 million viewers. Now let's look at the top non-conference games, and you also get a different look at this if you check out the previous series, where Florida State really makes a statement, of course. They play the game against LSU for a second consecutive year to a high viewership, 9.1 million. It's one of the top 10 games in all of college football for the season. However, let's also understand that the game was played with no competition on a Sunday night. Also, Florida State attracts viewers despite the Gators being down at 5-7 with 5 million views right there. Also, 5+ million views for a couple games against Notre Dame that Louisville and Duke played. Now, Louisville and especially Duke are not going to carry 5 million viewers against other teams. So again, this is one of the reasons why, even though I don't like it, and I think it's stupid for a number of reasons stated elsewhere, that Notre Dame boosts the ACC brand by playing these 5 or 6 games against the ACC, and we see them continually pop up among the best non-conference games for the ACC. Clemson, Notre Dame, not quite the matchup that it was the year before in South Bend on NBC when it drew like 7 or 8 million views, 3.24 million for Notre Dame and a Clemson team that was out of the ACC running at the time. South Carolina and North Carolina is a nice matchup on opening weekend at 3.4 million. Miami and Texas A&M played for a second consecutive year, this time on ABC in front of 4 million viewers. With the other conference breakdowns, we also showed a graphic with the least watched games for the conference for that particular season. Now, for the ACC, that's kind of tough to gauge because, again, most of those are going to be on the ACC network, and we are robbed of those ratings, and people have asked me why, and it's basically a network decision that if they are able to generate the ad revenue and cut the deals that they want with their corporate sponsors, then they don't need to pay for ratings, and that's what ESPN has apparently decided to do. But I will throw out some of these gems. Miami and Temple played on ESPN2 in front of 353,000. You've got NC State and VMI on the CW at 205,000. Marshall, Virginia Tech, 319,000 on ESPN2. Those games certainly are some of the worst rated for the season for the ACC. But again, if we could get a look at the ACC network, we would see numbers that drop below the ones I just listed. Now let's get to postseason play. And of course, the ACC left out of the college football playoff. That would have been nice to have seen Florida State and what that number would have been, because we certainly see the power of the Big Ten and the SEC playing in the playoff with teams like Alabama, Michigan this year. In the past, Georgia, Ohio State really topping out the numbers. But then we see lesser numbers for example, Washington, Michigan in the national championship game. 2.7 million less watched the national championship game than watched Michigan, Bama. But Florida State and Georgia pulled off a nice number despite the debacle of a game that was at 63-3. The Orange Bowl drew 10+ million views, so that was the highest rated non-playoff game in the postseason. Of course, Ohio State, Michigan, 19 million was the highest rated regular season game in all of college football. Then you have to go down the list. So you've got to go to the 9th rated game in the postseason to pick up another ACC team at North Carolina State over Kansas State. That game at 4.3 million. You see North Carolina, West Virginia as well at 3.8 million. The Louisville game against USC at 3.5 million. Clemson, Kentucky, one of the more entertaining bowl games, and the Gator Bowl at 3.4 million. On down the line, that Syracuse USF number is quite disappointing at 1.05 million. Now, I know the game was horrendous at 45-0, but the game's score usually doesn't impact the rating and the viewership as much as you would think, especially when this was the only game played, because it was a bowl game. It had no competition, and that just over 1 million viewers is generally about where most of the group of 5 bowl games rank. Of course, we know that the ACC is not pulling anywhere close to the numbers that the Big Ten and the SEC are, not even at the top of the conference. However, it might be an interesting comparison when we look at the Big 12. And of course, the factor going forward is going to be Oklahoma, Texas, and we will break that down. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. Please like the video, subscribe, check out the other videos. Those are linked down in the comments section right here at the Voice of College Football.